March 1945. The Rhine was behind them. Germany was in front of them. And inside one Sherman tank from the 761st Tank Battalion, a loader reached for the reserve rack and found steel emptiness. Not low ammunition, not the wrong ammunition, empty racks. The tank still smelled of oil, cordite, and frozen mud. The engine was coughing hot air into the cold. Somewhere ahead, German guns were already walking shells across the road. But the thing that stopped the men cold was not outside the tank. It was inside it. The rounds that were supposed to be there were not there. The 761st was not a green outfit. They were the Black Panthers, the first African-American tank battalion sent into combat by the United States Army. They had trained longer than most tank crews in the war. They had crossed into France, fought through Lorraine, pushed through the Ardennes, and followed Patton's Third Army toward Germany. By that spring, these men had already spent months doing the thing many officers had said black tankers could not do: fight armor, hold roads, break positions, keep machines alive in weather that punished both steel and skin. That morning their orders were simple in the way dangerous orders often sound simple. Advance, probe the German position, keep pressure on the line. The first Sherman moved out with its turret low and its crew listening for the sound every tanker feared: the crack of a hidden gun. It came before the column had gone far, a flash, a hit, a tank wounded in the road. Men bailed into mud and smoke. A commander got on the radio and called for support. Infantry on the flank, artillery on the suspected gun line, a route correction, anything. What came back was confusion. No clean support, no immediate cover, no answer that changed the order. And when the surviving crews checked their own ammunition, they understood the real shape of the trap. The Germans had guns ahead of them. Their own headquarters had left them without the reserves to answer. In armor, a missing shell is not paperwork. It is time, it is distance. It is the difference between suppressing a gun and driving into its mouth. By the time the attack was pulled back, 4 men were dead and 11 more were wounded. But the battlefield report was only the first report. The second one came from the mechanics. When the tanks returned, the men doing the inspection found what no after-action summary could soften. Reserve ammunition had never been loaded for the attack. The battalion had submitted the draw request. The request had moved through channels. The form had reached the place where a signature was supposed to turn paper into steel. And then it had stopped. Not denied, not corrected, not returned, stopped. At the same sector headquarters, ammunition approvals for other armored units had moved that morning without trouble. Their logs had signatures. Their loads had been released. Their Shermans went forward with racks filled the way war demanded. The 761st went forward with whatever was already in the guns. That was the part that made the room go quiet. Because a battlefield mistake can hide inside smoke. A dead radio can hide inside noise. A missed signal can vanish in the speed of combat. But a pending authorization log is colder than that. It sits in ink. It tells time. It remembers who moved quickly and who was allowed to wait. The 761st had been waiting in one form or another since before it reached Europe. They had waited while officers questioned whether black men belonged in tanks at all. They had waited through training camps where their performance had to be better than good, just to be treated as adequate. They had waited while supply moved faster for units whose competence was assumed, and slower for men forced to prove themselves after every victory. By the winter of 1944, the pattern was not always loud enough to name in a report. A request delayed here, a part late there. A field problem judged more harshly, an achievement written smaller than it had been fought. Racism in an army does not always announce itself with a speech. Sometimes it looks like a desk that does not hurry. Sometimes it looks like a clerk who never seems to see the same unit first. Sometimes it looks like a signature that arrives for white crews before breakfast, and for black crews after the dead are counted. The investigation did not need poetry. It had columns: time submitted, time received, units approved, units pending, ammunition issued, ammunition not issued, and under all of it 4 deaths that could not be filed as weather, terrain, or enemy action alone. The officer responsible for the sector gave the explanation men in headquarters often give when a clean explanation is needed fast. Administrative error, misrouted paperwork, no intent, no prejudice, no deliberate choice. A failure, yes. A tragic one, yes, but not the kind of failure anyone should call discrimination. Patton read the report differently. George Patton was not a simple man, and he was not a modern civil rights saint. He believed in fighting, obedience, discipline, speed, and victory. He judged men through the brutal lens of combat usefulness. But in that lens, the 761st had passed. They had fought. They had stayed. They had bled in the same mud as every other tank crew under his command. And in Patton's army, if a unit was ordered to attack, that unit was supposed to receive the tools to attack. Not praise, not speeches, ammunition, fuel, parts, infantry support when needed. Paperwork that moved because men in the field could not fire good intentions at an enemy gun. The sector commander was called in. The report was already on the table, marked, opened, waiting. Patton did not need to build a courtroom. The log had done that. Other armored units in the sector had approvals. The 761st had a pending notation. Other tanks had gone forward loaded. The Black Panthers had gone forward almost empty. 4 men were dead. 11 were in aid stations. The commander repeated the explanation. A clerk had missed it. A request had been misplaced. The delay was regrettable. The headquarters had no policy of unequal support. No policy. That phrase mattered, because men who benefit from a pattern often hide behind the absence of an order. There was no written order saying the 761st should wait. No memo saying their requests should sink to the bottom. No official sentence saying black tankers could carry the risk while white units received the steel. But the paper trail did not need a written confession. It had the result. Patton's answer was not long. He did not say the whole army had changed. He did not pretend one relief would pay every debt owed to the battalion. He looked at the log, then at the officer responsible for the sector, and made the point in the only language a headquarters could not avoid. You were responsible for this sector. These requests passed through your command. These men attacked without the ammunition they had properly requested, and 4 of them are dead. Responsibility does not disappear, because prejudice learned to wear clean gloves. The commander was removed from that sector. The official language was careful. It always is. Operational considerations, reassignment, command needs. No sentence in the public paperwork said that a black tank battalion had been sent forward without its ammunition, while other units were handled on time. No sentence said the word that everyone in the room understood, but the institution preferred not to write. Still, something changed after that meeting. Not enough, not nearly enough, but something precise. The 761st's ammunition requests began clearing. Fuel requests moved on schedule. Maintenance draws stopped freezing in the invisible places where paper can freeze. For the last weeks of the war in Europe, The logs started showing the ordinary regularity that should have existed from the beginning. Request submitted, request approved, load released. It sounds small only if you have never been inside a tank. Inside a tank, small paperwork becomes heavy metal, a signature becomes a shell, a stamp becomes a fuel drum. A routing slip becomes the difference between moving and burning in place. The men of the 761st kept fighting. They did not get a pause to mourn the pattern. They did not get a ceremony on the road. They kept doing what they had done since France, taking orders, repairing tracks, cleaning guns, driving through villages, sleeping beside steel, waking to fire. They were still at the front when Germany surrendered, and when the war ended, the country found another way to delay them. Their record was extraordinary. Their recognition was not. The 761st had served through some of the hardest months of the European war. Their combat record covered the Rhineland, the Ardennes, and the push into Germany. Their men earned medals, scars, and graves. But the unit citation their service deserved did not arrive when the war ended. It waited, for years, then decades. The paperwork that should have honored them moved with the same kind of slowness their ammunition once had. Only in 1978, long after many of the men were gone, did the presidential unit citation finally catch up to what they had done. That is why the story of those empty racks matters. Not because it proves Patton fixed racism. He did not. Not because one commander removed from one sector balanced the accounts. It did not. And not because the army suddenly became fair to the men who had carried its guns through Europe. It did not. The story matters because it shows how injustice often survives in the space between policy and consequence. No one has to write an evil order for men to die from unequal treatment. No one has to shout hatred for a request to be ignored. No one has to confess bias for a pattern to become a casualty list. The 761st knew that better than most. They had been told directly and indirectly that their courage would be questioned before it was counted. They had answered with combat. They had answered with roads held, towns entered, guns silenced, engines repaired, and missions completed under conditions that would have broken lesser units. And when a missing signature finally killed men in a way headquarters could not hide, the record became too solid to wave away. Paper had failed them, then paper exposed the failure, and after that paper moved. For 6 weeks it moved. Every approval that cleared on time was not justice in the large sense. It was not apology. It was not full recognition. It was not a nation admitting what it had asked of black soldiers while denying them equal respect. But it was something a tank crew could use. It was ammunition in the rack, fuel in the drum, parts in the crate, a Sherman able to answer when the gun ahead of it fired. History often remembers the grand gestures, the speeches, the medals, the surrender dates, but men survive wars through smaller things. A bolt tightened before dawn. A radio that works, a supply sergeant who signs when he is supposed to sign, a commander who understands that an ignored form can kill as surely as a shell. The 761st did not need sympathy in March of 1945. They needed the same support every fighting unit needed. They had already earned that support the hard way. The tragedy was that it took empty ammunition racks, 4 dead men, and a paper trail no one could bury to make headquarters act like it. In the final weeks before Germany surrendered, no more men from that battalion were sent forward because a signature had been allowed to sleep. That did not make the army equal. It made one piece of paper move on time. And on a road in Germany, inside a Sherman tank, that could be the difference between a man becoming history and a man coming home.